Not every battle in history ends with a heroic charge or a glorious victory. Some end in utter chaos, total confusion, or just pure unadulterated embarrassment. Today we were digging into the history books to uncover the battles that ended in the most baffling and downright awkward ways imaginable. These are the moments commanders and entire armies probably wished could be erased from memory forever. And yes, these actually happened. First up, let's travel back to 1274 Italy, where a battle was lost not to swords or arrows, but to a herd of cows. Picture this. Soldiers are dug in, tense, waiting for the enemy. Suddenly they hear a thunderous noise. A huge dark mass is charging toward them. Is it a surprise cavalry attack? They don't stick around to find out. The soldiers panic, break ranks, and flee for their lives, abandoning their positions and handing victory to the other side. The problem? That terrifying enemy force was just a stampede of local cattle. They literally lost a battle without ever seeing a single enemy soldier, all thanks to some very intimidating livestock. Next, we have the tale of an army that defeated itself. In 1788, the Austrian army was camped near the town of Karansebes, waiting to fight the Ottoman Empire. Some of their scouts went ahead and found a group of local merchants selling alcohol. They bought up the booze and started a party. When more Austrian soldiers arrived and wanted to join in, the drunken scouts refused to share. An argument broke out, which quickly escalated into a full-blown brawl. Someone fired a shot. In the darkness and confusion, soldiers thought the Ottomans were attacking. The entire army descended into chaos, fighting and firing at shadows, which were actually their own comrades. By the time the sun rose, thousands of Austrians were dead or wounded. The real Ottoman army arrived 2 days later to find the Austrians had already done their job for them. Birds have often been seen as omens. But what happens when they predict your doom? In 249 BC, during the First Punic War, the Roman consul Publius Claudius Pulcher was about to lead his fleet into the Battle of Drepana. As was tradition, he consulted the sacred chickens. The ritual was simple. If the chickens ate the grain offered to them, the gods favored the battle. If they didn't, it was a bad omen. On this day, the chickens absolutely refused to eat. Annoyed, Pulcher reportedly exclaimed, "If they will not eat, let them drink," and had the sacred birds thrown overboard into the sea. He then proceeded with the attack and suffered one of the most disastrous naval defeats in Roman history. The gods, or perhaps just a very skilled Carthaginian admiral, were clearly not on his side. Moral of the story: don't disrespect the chickens. Sometimes your greatest enemy isn't another army, but the weather itself. Napoleon Bonaparte learned this the hard way during his infamous invasion of Russia in 1812. He led the largest European army ever assembled, the Grande Armée, deep into Russian territory. But the Russians employed a scorched earth strategy, retreating and destroying supplies, forcing Napoleon's army further and further in. Then winter came early and with a vengeance. The infamous General Winter proved to be a far more lethal foe than the Russian army. Temperatures plummeted, supplies ran out. Soldiers froze to death in their sleep, their boots cracked from the cold, and the once mighty army was reduced to a starving, freezing mob. Of the over 600,000 men who marched into Russia, fewer than 100,000 made it out. The battlefield was winter itself, and it showed no mercy. Have you ever been in a crowd where one person starts running and suddenly everyone is running, but no one knows why? Now imagine that with 2 entire armies. This exact scenario played out in several medieval battles. It would start with a false alarm, maybe a mistaken trumpet call, a rumor spreading through the ranks, or just a few nervous soldiers losing their nerve. One side would panic and start to flee. The other army, seeing their enemy running, would assume they had won and give chase. The battle would dissolve into a chaotic stampede, with both sides running across the field, often in opposite directions, without a single sword being swung in anger. The result was pure confusion, with no clear winner, and everyone just sort of deciding the fight was over. It was the medieval equivalent of the fire alarm going off and everyone just going home. Finally, what happens when your victory celebration goes horribly wrong? Throughout history, Especially during sieges involving gunpowder, a victory could be just as dangerous as the battle itself. After successfully capturing a castle or fortress, soldiers would rush in to celebrate. The problem was these fortifications were often packed with barrels of gunpowder. In the chaos and excitement, a stray spark from a torch or a celebratory bonfire could lead to a catastrophic explosion. There are multiple accounts of victorious armies accidentally blowing themselves up, sometimes killing more of their own men in the post-battle celebration than they lost during the actual fighting. It's the ultimate example of snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. So why do these stories of blunders and embarrassing failures matter? They prove something incredibly important about conflict. Wars aren't just about grand strategies, brilliant generals, or superior weapons. At their core, they are profoundly human events, driven by human emotions and, more often than not, human error. Panic, arrogance, greed, and simple bad luck have shaped the course of history just as much as bravery and genius. These moments show us that behind the epic tales of glory, there's a much messier, stranger, and sometimes funnier reality. And humans, it turns out, make a lot of mistakes. History is so much stranger and more ridiculous than we often imagine. Which one of these historical facepalms did you find the most embarrassing? Let me know down in the comments. And that's it for today. History really is stranger than you think. Which of these moments was the most embarrassing? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoy weird and unbelievable history like this, subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next.